you, Ashley. And good morning and welcome to our spiritual family online. I want to say first and foremost, thank you. Because if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I invited you to participate with us for Undy Sunday. Today is Undy Sunday, and I know that the level of the camera does not show you below the platform level, but we have boxes and boxes and boxes, and many of you responded, and we got packages from Amazon all week long. And I really, truly thank you for participating in helping the homeless veterans here in Tulsa at the annual stand down. If you have not done so or you just did it, the stand down isn't till another week. So if they are coming in the mail, if you said, oh, I knew there was something I forgot to do, you still have time. So please send them to us. The second thing I want to tell you is that we're going to start a book study today, and it is The Mightier Than Circumstance by Frank B. Whitney, and you can order it through Amazon. I'm sorry, it is not a Kindle download. It's that old of a book, but it's not out of print. And also, there's a handout. Now, those of us who are here have the handout, and you will have the handout as a PDF download on go to tulsaunity.com, our Sunday lessons page, and under the lesson for today will be the PDF file when I remember how to do that. But anyway, I thought, oh, it's really simple. I just do it really quickly, but I will have it done in the next couple of hours. So Mightier Than Circumstance is a wonderful, wonderful book. You know, these old Unity books just really inspire me a lot. And one of the things I thought, how interesting the coincidences, the serendipities of the moment, is this was about 8 weeks ago when I was doing the newsletter, and I thought, well, what are the titles? What am I going to be talking about in September? And I happened to see, just quote-unquote, happened to see this book on my shelf. And I thought, oh, I haven't read that book for a long time, so I pulled it down. And I thought, how interesting, the title of the book, Mightier Than Circumstance. And isn't that all what we are concerned about today? The circumstances that our friends and our family sometimes that are experiencing in Texas. You know, so it just felt to me like sometimes I think, what can I do? How can I be in situations that relatively, you know, if I hadn't seen it on the news, wouldn't have known. It has not touched me in any way. And yet, because these people are people, because this is happening in our country, because this is happening, period, to others, then in fact I am connected, and what is mine to do and how to do it. And I think that this little gem of a book, Mightier Than Circumstance, don't you love that title? It reminds us that no matter what we're facing in our life, that we have the power, we have the presence to be mightier than the circumstance. Now, what's important to remind ourselves is he's not saying we change the circumstance. The circumstance that, especially in Houston, is difficult. There is no other way to say it. It's ugly, it's challenging, it's all of the things that we can't possibly even imagine it is. Yet, there's something within us that's mightier than every circumstance. So through reading this book, we're going to explore and discover some of those various ways to train ourselves spiritually to understand what it means to be mightier than circumstance. Now let's talk about Frank B. Whitney. Frank B. Whitney is not a name that probably many of you know. He was kind of the second generation of Unity. He came into the Unity picture in the 1910s, I believe. He originally had gone to be a dentist. So by trade, he had gone to medical school. He graduated. He had his own business in Kansas City. But slowly but surely, he came under the employment of Silent Unity. And his job at Silent Unity was to be a letter writer. Back in the old days, when you called on the phone, they took down your name, your address, and what you're praying about, and they sent it to the Department of Letter Writers. And it was a very prestigious place to be a letter writer. And so Frank was one of these letter writers. And he said one day to Mr. Fillmore, our Unity's co-founder, Charles Fillmore, he said, "You know, Mr. Fillmore, it just seems to me that if people had something that they could remind them of truth daily truth, then somehow I think that all of these prayer letters, their prayers could be answered more effectively, more efficiently, because they would know that they were mightier than circumstance. They would know the power within you." So Charles said to him, "Well, what are you thinking about doing?" Now, Frank Whitney was a visionary. Frank Whitney was, he was he was an artist. He was a poet. He was a writer. He was a songwriter. And so Frank said, "You know what we should do is we need to create a book with a daily word, a little affirmation for every single day. And because more and more people are now commuting to work, they're not out on the farm, they're not at home, it needs to be a small little book so that it can fit in their pocket or fit in their purse." And so, in July of 1923, what was born is, of course, the magazine we know today as Daily Word. Now, this one is the large print edition because Marianne needs the large print, but usually they're the smaller editions. Of course, you can get it electronically also nowadays. But this was the brainchild of Frank B. Whitney. For 14 years, now imagine this, he wrote every single piece in Daily Word. 14 years. That is a lot of writing. And as I said, Frank was also a poet and a songwriter. And so as we study this book, we will see that Frank's poetry sort of infuses lots and lots of his writings. He wrote several books. He died at a relatively young age. He had a stroke in the late 1930s. And so he kind of goes off the field of vision sort of just at the height of his career, if you will, in Unity. And it was an extremely sad commentary that Charles Fillmore said that he was a star that went across the sky, that he was a visionary who blazed a new trail for unity as well as for all. Do you realize that the Daily Word magazine, or the Daily Word pamphlet that we have, is the first of all the Daily Word types of magazines that, the Catholics have one, the Baptists have one, the Presbyterians have one. They all have one, but they came from the original idea of Frank B. Whitney. So what Whitney did then is that he would write in a style that was very memorable, easy to read, quick reading. So it's interesting to me, the early Unity writers, the first sort of blush of Unity writers, Charles Fillmore and Dr. Emily Cady, Thomas Trord, many of those writers were very erudite. And when you read those books, you just go, is that in English? Because they're difficult reads. Then we have kind of the other side of the spectrum, Myrtle Fillmore in her healing letters, Lowell Fillmore, her oldest son, Begin Again, and we have people like Frank Whitney, Martha Schmock, May Rowland, who wrote sort of for the everyday person. And they were much loved writers because people said, I get what they're trying to say. I only had to read one page and I understood it. But we want to remember always that these writers always had that strong spiritual foundation that came from the Cadys, that came from the Fillmores, that came from all of the classes and all of their personal inner work. So we know that Frank wrote 4 books, and actually the 5th one was published posthumously in the early 1950s. We also know, as I said a moment ago, that he was a prolific poet. and we turned many of his poems into songs. So, I Behold the Christ in You is in our hymnal. My Life Begins for Me Today is also in our hymnal, and you will see Frank B. Whitney is the author of the poem that would undergird that song. And these have become traditional unity songs that we sing, and we still continue to sing because of the richness of the meat that is in them. So we're going to look at one of the books that Frank Whitney wrote. The others have a lot more poetry in them, which is wonderful, but we want to get some meat from what this man is telling us. One of the things I want to tell you about Mightier Than Circumstance, if you choose to buy it, is that it's not a book to sit down and read today. I'm going to put it on my to-do list. I'm going to read it cover to cover. The idea that Whitney had was that it was about 3 pages, and of course it's a small book. They were all made at that time. Whitney's idea of something that could be carried in your pocket, in your purse, was that was technology's advancement at that time. And he felt like if we had just had a little nugget to read early in the morning or late at night before you go to bed, that then it would help you to embed spiritual truth in your being. So this little book is a wonderful little book of rich spiritual nuggets. Just consider it your daily spiritual vitamin if you choose to read it. So in the first part of the book, Frank begins with the thought that sort of infuses all of his writings, that my life begins for me today. That was the song. That was the poem. That something about life beginning anew was a really, really powerful thought to Frank. And so, on the one hand, what these early chapters of Mightier Than Circumstances are talking about is how to set the stage for the day when you first wake up. The other side of the coin is how to let go of the day before you go to sleep. Because if you're willing to let go and to forgive and release before you go to sleep, then what happens in the new morning, right? You're feeling awake, you're feeling less stressed, you're feeling like, it is a new day. So I'm going to invite you to get your hand out, and we're going to take some nuggets out of each of the 3 chapters that we're looking at here in this first lesson. So we'll be going through the book for the next couple of weeks. And I love this preface. To you who, taking up this book, take a forward step in proving yourself mightier than any circumstance in your life. He doesn't say you're going to fix the world. He doesn't say you're going to change things in Houston. He doesn't say it'll make it all better. He says, when you pick up this book and you begin to utilize this book, the concepts and the ideas, you are going to take a step forward in your spiritual realization. You're going to take a step forward in a greater understanding of a power that is within you to deal with circumstances. Isn't that the most difficult thing, really? I mean, you can't change XYZ, fill in the blank. But how you deal with those circumstances. We all know that there's some circumstances when people begin to deal with them, it makes them bitter and angry. And other people say, well, if it hadn't have been for that, whatever that is in my life, I didn't like it at the time. How many like a bad experience? No, certainly not at the time. But later on, I can look back and say, you know what? If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have been here today. I wouldn't have had a greater appreciation for my life. I wouldn't have had a greater appreciation for things. You know, not too long ago, I went to the doctor for, routine check, and I'm sitting there with, fill out the form, please. And I'm like, no. And all of a sudden, I just stopped and I thought, there's nothing on here. The doctor even said, you didn't fill out the form. I said, yes, I did, and I am grateful. I don't have anything to tell you. I don't have anything to report. suddenly my awareness of my health, suddenly my awareness of my heritage, my genes, suddenly my awareness, I went, wow. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for demonstrating healthy life. Thank you for the wherewithal that I have to take care of my own body, even though most mornings I get up and my tennis shoes and I have to have a long talk before we get working. But somehow, some way, that awareness begins to filter through us that the circumstances in our lives, it's not that, and we make that the issue, that problem, or those people, that's the problem. What we're saying is step back to be aware of the presence and power within us. So in the very first chapter, he's talking about this. Now remember what I said a moment ago, that Whitney's book is a compilation of his writings. Therefore, it is not a teaching. Like when we talked about Lessons in Truth about a year ago, there was a building of an idea and a concept. So by the time you if you started at the last chapter, you really didn't kind of understand what she was talking about. You had to start from the beginning and work your way through. What you're going to find in Mightier Than Circumstance is that a lot of times he cycles back through the same idea and concept because these are separate writings that were published at different times and then compiled into a book. So I love this this is the first chapter. He says, have you ever thought of the dawning of a new day as the dawning of a new life and a new world? Or did you get up this morning? Oh my God, it's Sunday. I can't believe it's Sunday. Like some people I know. It's like, oh, where is that clock? Shut that thing off. And then you started, I didn't get this done, I haven't done this, and the litany starts. Rather than saying, well, today is the dawning of a new day, a new life, a new world. That's a whole different mindset, isn't it? And I have to tell you, I have to struggle with that because I bring from the night before everything into the new day. And what he's saying is, no. Today, when you opened your eyes, a new world was born. A new life was begun. Last night, the curtain of darkness closed upon your yesterday. Ooh, isn't that nice? I love his writing. In the darkness of the night, in the process of sleep, your old self died to things of the past. Each dawning brings a new day. Not a single self-imposed limitation of yesterday can prevail in your new day. The world is yours. Now, there it is again. He's not saying you can change circumstances. What he is saying is your own self-imposed limitation. That's where the work has got to be done. And quite frankly, it's easier to change the world than it is to change myself, right? Because it's hard to change my thinking. This is what he's talking about. We have to begin by changing our thinking about life. To get up every day and say, wow, it's a brand new day, it's a brand new world. And what I was yesterday and who I was yesterday, I do not have to bring all of that negativity with me into the future. I have to say it's a brave new world today. Just remember, however, that you must not condemn yourself for the mistakes or failures of yesterday, because what do we do when we get up in the morning? Oh, I didn't get this done, I didn't get that done. Oh my gosh, I'm behind the 8 ball before I ever begin. To end well brings us into that new morning. He said to take hold of life, your ability to take a new hold on life depends on your ability to break with the thought of the past and acquire a new outlook on the present and the future. Again, a thought. A thought. We have worn the ruts in the road of our brain so deep. So deep. And when this happens, my negative response is. When that happens, my negative response is. When this happens, that's the way I'm going to feel. And what he's saying is, no, you've got to back up. You've got to slow down and say, wait a minute, this is a brand new day. I don't have to feel that way. I felt that way yesterday. Good for yesterday. But I don't have to do that today. He said, the value of an unpleasant situation of yesterday lies entirely in its ability to contribute to your good today. You know what? I'm not going to make that mistake today. I made it yesterday. Don't want to do that again. So he's saying to us, okay, learn from the past, but let the past be the past. Your clinging to the memory of the misfortune and sorrow of yesterday keeps you from taking hold of a new life. That's very difficult. We all know that it's difficult, especially in the face of a large loss. It's hard to just say, well, the past is the past. We're not just discounting the past. That's not what he's talking about. We have learned from the past. We've understood the past in light of what we could have or should have or did do better, and now we move forward. If you would improve conditions, you must make new history for yourself. To be content to bask in the glories and success of yesterday is to fail to see the blessings of today right at hand. You know, Bruce Springsteen, glory days, they may pass you by, glory days. Okay, Bruce and I need a little work, but that's what the song is all about. Back in the glory days when I was the great high school football player, and back in the glory days when I was Miss, Oklahoma, back in the glory days. Well, that's nice. They were glory days and have at it. They were good fun, but that's not where you live today. But if your life is always about when it was great back, fill in the blank, then you can't see the good that's today. And remember, he's training us. He's training us. If we're going to be mightier than circumstance, he's training our mindset to see things differently, to think things differently. In the 3rd chapter there, he says, I give up all tendencies to blame myself for the mistakes of the day, since I have acted according to my best judgment at the time. Oh, how many have had to learn that lesson the hard way? I did the best I could with what I knew at the time I was doing it. It made really good sense to me now. Back then, but it doesn't make good sense to me now. Why I invested in this, why I married that, why I left that job, why I did that, why I did. I think at the time that was really a smart idea. And now I look back and go, what were you thinking? Right? To be able to say, I acted out of the best I knew how. And today, whatever decisions you are making, you are acting out of the best that you know how today. And you go forward. At dawn, he says, I realize that I have never before lived in the new day and that it will have pleasant surprises and many blessings. I like that. It will have pleasant surprises and many blessings. I realize in the new day that my failures of the past belong in the past. My success belongs in the present, the new day. I cease to look to tomorrow for my happiness. When I get the lotto, when I get the fill in the blank. I realize that I can be happy tomorrow only through building up a consciousness of happiness today. So he's kind of setting some foundations for us, all right? He's setting the foundations to say, we've got to change our thinking. We've got to change our point of view. If we are ever going to recognize and know and understand our spiritual inner strength to deal with any circumstance and situation that comes in our life, then it has to begin inside, not outside. And I love this poem because it gives me a wonderful image. Again, this is there's at the end of every chapter, there is a poem. He said, today God puts into your hands a day that's bright and that's new and bright. Yours to enjoy however you will. It's his again tonight. This morning in the wee small hours he gave to you this prize, entrusted you with one new day wherein all goodness lies. Now you must find the good it has and bring it forth to view, for he has put within this day some treasures meant for you. And when you take the good things out, some good you must put in. So when tonight God views your days, he'll find no thought of sin. Now if tonight God sees that you have taken out the good and put good back right in its place, that you have understood just how to treat a brand new day, then on tomorrow's dawn, you'll find you have a brighter day and others from then on. Isn't that a great poem? It just sits nice. And that's a lot of his poetry. So I think that Whitney wants us to learn about how it is that we can begin to change our thinking. I loved his image that's in that chapter about going to the bank. He says, you're going to the bank and you're withdrawing one new day. All right? So when you wake up in the morning, and I'm playing with this image a little bit. As soon as I get up in the morning, I say, I'm going to the bank in my fluffy little slippers and barely with my coffee, and I'm saying, excuse me, God, I would like one new day. God said, which box do you want? The little one, the big one? Oh, just give me the one there in the middle. Okay, I'll take that. And have you ever gone to have a safe deposit box? You have to put the key in, and the lid comes up, and you go, oh, I forgot I had that. Oh, look at all the wonderful stuff. And that's what we want to have an image of. And then at night, as we're going to sleep, I close the safe deposit box, lock it back up, and I say, here, God, I put the blessings back. I put it back. Now, you take it back and let me rest for this night. Let me sleep in the knowing that I see that in this night my body is renewed, that I am filled with spirit and light, that forgiveness, that grace is all a part of the movement for my inner work. That on the new day when I wake up, it's time to go to the bank again and get a whole brand new day. Another box that has all kinds of blessings, and that I open it with great care. So I invite you to, you can't download the book, sorry about that. You have to order the book from Amazon, and to, if not, then take the little affirmations home and play with it in your mind. Read that poem over and over again. The idea that God has loaned you this beautiful day. How are you going to utilize it? How are you going to look for the blessings? Not in the sense of, oh, it's not this, it's not that, but rather to see within ourselves the glory, the beauty, the wonderful, the blessings, the gifts. And we can only do that when we have a heart and mind filled with gratitude, looking for the light, looking for the gift in each new day. Thank you, and God bless.